And that is the perfect transition to our next speaker, Jude Currivan, who will take up the conversation from here. A physicist, cosmologist, and futurist who exemplifies the light triad, a light worker in every sense. Thank you, Jude.
Thank you, Susan. And thank you, everyone. It's wonderful to be together. And thank you, Rick, because it's so important now that we come together in that silence where we remember the wholeness of who we really are. So I'd like to use my time to begin to share some emergent understanding of what we're describing here. First of all, of course, the Nova Institute for Health. And the root word for health is the root word for whole. And yet it seems to me that, as Susan has explained, for various reasons, we actually have a collective dis-ease of separation at the moment. And that's a dis-ease that's been growing and continuing for the last period of time. And for me as a cosmologist, it's really founded on our worldview, because our worldviews affect our values, they drive our behaviors. So if our worldview is fragmented, then so will be our behaviors, and so will be to that extent our values. So we've been working together, I think, for a period of time, not just us here, of course, but humanity, to try and come together, to try and cooperate more. But if we're still coming from a fragmented worldview, those efforts are by their nature more about trying to deal with the symptoms of the dis-ease rather than the causation of the dis-ease. So what I'd like to share, and I'm sure my fellow speakers will share all together now, is the potential for transformational change, because the paradigm that we were brought up with, I think most of us were brought up with, I certainly was based on a science of materialism and separation. It basically described a universe bereft of meaning and intrinsic purpose. It talked of the processes of evolution as somehow accidental, and that over a vast amount of time, those evolutionary progress was able to arrive at biological organisms such as us that have consciousness, and that somehow our consciousness arises from our material brains, even though our consciousness may be deemed to be immaterial. But that's the worldview we've been inhabiting, and that's really based on a very mechanistic 19th century science. But all our structures have come from that. Our governance, our organizations, even our healthcare, our education, all of that. And now it's been completely turned on its head, because leading edge science and discoveries and scientific breakthroughs at all scales of evidence and existence and across numerous fields of research are revealing a vastly expanded understanding of the nature of reality. What it's revealing to us, in fact, is converging with universal wisdom teachings and spiritually based teachings to offer an emergent cosmology of a living universe, therefore a sentient universe that meaningfully exists and purposefully evolves as a non-locally unified entity. Now, what this does is enables us to ground our understanding in much more fundamental realms of intelligence and causation and meaning and purpose. And what it does is, it seems to me, is offer us a way home to remembering who we really are. It offers us a way of healing our fragmented worldview into a whole worldview, which, as I say, is convergent with universal and spiritually based teachings, but is based on the latest scientific evidence, to such an extent that I keep going back, I'm very old, the 2022 Nobel Prize in physics was given to 3 researchers who had been studying the universal non-local, unified nature of reality for decades. Now, the Nobel Prize is only given to settled science. So there is no controversy that our universe isn't whole. The controversy is trying to continue to persuade us that it isn't. But we now are in a time, a wonderful opportunity, a time of threshold, where we can literally remember to this wholeness. And what this enables us to do is to articulate a unitive narrative. As Susan said, this unitive awareness, as we embrace it and embrace its opportunity, enables us to articulate a unitive narrative. And because we're a story-sharing species, we've told stories around hearths for as long as perhaps it's meant to be human. But latterly, those stories have been based on fragmentation and materiality and separation. We now have the opportunity to tell new stories, a newly evidenced unitive narrative that can underpin and frame transformational change in the world. We can put unitive in front of anything we want to do, from the being of it into the doing of it, whether it's the transformation into unitive economics, living economics that serve the good of the whole of people and planet and all the children of our planetary home. It can be unitive education, where we literally bring forward the remembering of children that they are whole, that they are wonderful, beautiful beings of light. It can bring the understanding into unitive healthcare, not just into well-being, but to whole being, where every aspect of who we are is nurtured and welcomed into a lived wholeness. So this is, for me, as a cosmologist who's been, walking this path since I was a very young child, an incredibly exciting and hopeful moment, because this emergent cosmology of a living, non-locally unified universe is such that mind and consciousness aren't something we have. They are literally what we and the whole world are. And it is a cosmology, whereas Jessica teaches the natural patterns that all systems, that all living systems exhibit are universal, and they play out through us too. The whole being work that Paul has done and the multidimensional understanding of our consciousness is natural for us within this emergent understanding. We literally are microcosmic co-creators of a meaningful existing, purposefully evolving universe. And to just go back to Rick, I loved that you brought us to our breath. And when I was growing up, as I suspect most of us were, I was taught that our universe began as a big bang. And we know it wasn't big. That's always been facetious. But the implied chaos of a bang is a beginning that now we realize is fundamentally wrong. Instead, our universe began in its minute, minuscule origin 13.8 billion years ago, not in a bang, but as the first moment of an ongoing big breath. So as space has expanded ever since, as time has flowed ever since, more and more and more complexity, conscious awareness, individuated abundance and diversity has been able to be experienced by its mindful reality. And so now I love to speak about when we breathe, our universe is breathing through us in every moment. So as we breathe, we can perhaps remember the intimacy of our relationship with each other, with ourselves, with each other, with our planetary home Gaia and our whole universe. And so at WholeWorld-View, which I co-founded in 2017, to share this message, to serve the understanding and experiencing and embodying of unitive awareness at this time, to provide the evidence and invite the being into the doing of unitive action. We therefore speak of acting local, feeling global, and thinking cosmic. And on that note, I'd thank you, everyone, and pass back to Susan.